Hello and welcome to another episode of the Diet Obsessed podcast. I am your host, Veronica Santarelli. I am a certified personal trainer, nutrition and weight loss coach, and this podcast is for those of us who are just obsessed with everything related to improving health and longevity, with a special emphasis on food, fitness, and diet culture. All right, let's get into the show. But first, if you want to support the show, there's a few ways you can do that. First of all, if you're watching on YouTube, just click that subscribe button. It does not cost a thing. Just make sure that you get new episodes delivered into your inbox, and it really, really helps us video podcasters. Another way is, so I do 2 free episodes every single month. Every other week, I put out a free episode. This is one of those free episodes. And then every other week, I do a premium content show. And those are premium content that you subscribe to pay for. And that's not on YouTube. That's just wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're on Patreon, you can get both levels. And then anywhere else you listen to podcasts, you can subscribe and get those additional premium content shows. And those are extra juicy, extra personal, extra kind of sometimes controversial topics that it's just not for the general public. And so those you do pay for, and it's very different than subscribing on YouTube, where subscribing on YouTube is essentially just following someone. And then if you're not watching on YouTube and you don't want to subscribe and pay for premium content, you can simply leave a rating or review. That really helps us podcasters too. Just leave some stars, leave a comment on iTunes, or again, wherever you listen to podcasts, and that also really helps us. And I appreciate your support. All right, everyone, let's jump into my segments. My regular segments, and then I have a very good Valentine's Day weekend type of podcast review. Today, you're going to be listening to this on the 15th, which is, right after Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day this year falls on the 14th. I'm going to be airing this show for the first time on the 15th. Taping it on Tuesday before, so I just thought that this was a good timely podcast to review. It's all about relationships, romantic relationships affect your food choices. So I'll get into that in a minute. First, let's jump into my first segment. I always like to do a mental health check-in because obviously mental health is so tied into our overall health. And today, so I started my Whole Foods journey, okay? And I definitely, for me, for my body, when I'm eating whole foods, mostly whole foods, I feel really, really good. And normally the way I like to eat is the 80-20 rule. And I love nutritious, nutrient-dense foods, whole foods. And I also like the junk, right? I also like ultra-processed foods. I grew up with both in my household, so I have an affinity for both. But my body definitely responds and feels better to whole foods, of course. And I just needed a break, right? So started that on February 1st, which was a Sunday. So that was kind of a good challenge for me to start on the day that I normally am indulging the most. So it was a good way to start. Now, I did go into it knowing that the Super Bowl was coming up and that I was going to host the Super Bowl. And, hosting the Super Bowl, we've been doing a good amount of entertaining lately, just with different events that have happened. And entertaining in general can be a little bit stressful, just preparing for everything, getting the house clean, all of that. This year, I usually put it all on my own shoulders to cook everything, to prepare everything. This year we did more of a potluck. We were like, okay, we're going to make this, this, and this. I had planned on making 3 dishes. And I was like, anybody else, if you want anything else, just bring it. which I think was a good way to do things. And I might do that more often in the future. But what I planned on doing with my partner Chad is, so I've talked about this before, he's trying to become this beer influencer, and he's grown on Instagram. He has like 30,000 followers. He's his main page is Drunky Old Men, but it's under the umbrella of Brutiful Adventures. Get it? Brutiful Adventures. So anyway, and that's his YouTube channel, Brutiful Adventures. And so we wanted to kind of team up and help each other film content. So we decided that we would make some beer infused recipes. So we made a beer cheese, we made beer infused homemade pretzel bites, and we wanted to film it. We both get content out of it. He started a YouTube channel that he's now trying to grow. And it's kind of like, okay, we'll both get great content. We'll support each other. But here's the thing with me, with cooking. First of all, I make a mess. Like when I go to cook anything, it's like things are on the ceiling. And he is a OCD clean freak. So the two of us together are, just opposites coming together in the kitchen. And I think that can be stressful for both of us because he's trying to keep everything clean and I'm just all over the place trying to get like the perfectionist in me comes out and I want everything coming out perfectly. And then of course, trying to cook a recipe for the first time is also stressful because you've never made it before. You're not sure how it's going to turn out. Sometimes the way a recipe's laid out is, I don't know, sometimes it's easy to miss a step and forget something or realize it can be done a better way. And that happened in this situation. And in the middle of everything, I ran out of an ingredient. I'm like, oh my God, like we had just made the pretzel dough. And then I realized I was going to run out of this baking soda that I needed for a couple of the recipes. So I had to leave halfway through the show. I drove to one store. I put this on my Instagram at the Diet Obsessed Podcast if you want to follow me there. But so I needed aluminum-free baking soda. So I go to the closest grocery store, which is like this very cheap, not very good grocery store. And they only had baking powder with aluminum in it. I'm like, oh, are you serious? And this is Super Bowl Sunday. And Waste Management Open is happening here. The roads were crowded. So I'm like, oh, and I knew Trader Joe's had it. There was a Sprouts closer. Of course, frugal, cheap Veronica didn't want to pay 3 times the amount for Sprouts branded baking powder. So I drove an extra 5 minutes out of my way to go to Trader Joe's, I realized Waste Management Open was going, but as I was driving there, I'm realizing I'm going to the Trader Joe's that is closest to the Waste Management Open and where everybody parks. And anyway, it just made that trip that much more trafficky, that much more stressful. Anyway, got the stupid baking powder, got back to the house. So that whole 30 minutes, I should have been making my beer cheese and having all that time to do that. It just put us back. So then by the time we got around to shredding the cheese and putting together the beer cheese, people were arriving. So we ended up not using the food processor to break everything down. And when we started making the beer cheese, it was clumpy. I didn't use a big enough pan and it was spilling all over the place and the cheese was burning into the stove. And I was like, we have to switch pans. And then I'm like, we need to put this in the food processor. So we're switching pans and pouring this hot, cheesy, clumpy mixture into the food processor. And it finally came out okay and fine. Definitely not as well as it could have come out if we had practiced making the recipe prior. We had done kind of a practice round, but it's hard to do that because it's also getting all those ingredients and finding the time to cook. So anyway, needless to say, then the baking powder that we have to pour, because basically what you have to do is boil water, pour the baking powder into it so that when you roll out the pretzel bites, you dip them into this, like you boil them for 30 seconds in this baking powder infused water, and then you put them on the tray to bake them. And as soon as I pour the baking powder into the boiling water, it just overflows and it's just boiling over this big bubbly mixture of water and baking powder, and it goes all over the stove, and it's caked to the side of the big pot that we're boiling it in. Oh my God, it was a disaster to say the least. Everyone's like milling around. The camera's following everybody else now because everyone's talking. And I'm getting stressed. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, screw this. And I'm just like, and my mic's on and I'm like saying these things, and who knows, the camera, I'm sure, picked some of it up, but also was filming everybody else. It was a disaster. So anyway, we finally make everything. It was fine. And again, I was debating whether I was even going to try my own food, whether I was going to try to stick perfectly to my whole foods diet, or if I was going to indulge that one day and try my pretzel bites with beer cheese. And I'm like, well, I can't film this thing and not try this on camera. So anyway, so we finally get the pretzels baked. We brush them in butter. We sprinkle them with salt. They came out nice. They actually did taste like kind of like an Auntie Annie's pretzel. I, put plenty of butter on them. So anyway, so we take a pretzel bite, we dip it in our beer cheese. Chad and I cheers on the thing, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm eating pretzel bites today. Or at least gonna try them. So we eat a bite of the pretzel bite with the beer cheese. That finally came out okay. And they were delicious. They tasted good. Definitely the recipe could be perfected. We could make this recipe way better by doing it over. But needless to say, that was very stressful, just trying to cook and film, and eventually I want to be doing more of that. Like I would like a big part of my YouTube channel to become more about cooking and food and trying things and reviewing food and stuff like that. I just need the time, and I need to get better at filming stuff and learning the angles. And that alone is, I don't like to do it. I think eventually when I get good at it and I figure it all out and it becomes easier. Right now it's just very uncomfortable, very new. And it just, again, it's all trial and error. Like this, now doing this video podcast has become second nature to me. Whereas at first, like wrapping my mind around it, it took a long time just to get here. But now it's easy. And so I will get there eventually. It's just going to take me some time. So beyond that, right? The feeling good about eating whole foods and then taking this one day of a break. Now, for some people, this is like the diet culture cycle, right? It's going off track and, oh, fuck it, I messed up. I'm just gonna, like, the whole month's blown. I'll start over next month. Or I'm just gonna eat as much as I humanly can this day and then get back on track tomorrow. And in that is beating yourself up, being hard on yourself. And I don't do that, right? I definitely have a healthier mindset in terms of, I just said, you know what, I'm going to take this day. I'm going to enjoy indulgent food today, take this one day off this month, and then get back to my whole foods journey tomorrow. And so with that, now I did really indulge that day because there were these, well, I'll talk about all the things I ate in my Tasty Treats segment, but needless to say, I didn't beat myself up. I just, like, mental health wise, I was like, you know what, I'm taking the day, and I'm okay with that. Because at the end of the day, there is no such thing as perfect, right? It's just, it doesn't exist. And I'm not trying to attain that. So, so I gave myself that day at the Super Bowl. We had a great time, and Monday got right back onto my Whole Foods journey. So I also finally this week, Monday was the first day, but I got back to working out. So I'd taken a good amount of time off because I wanted to get my Botox done, which I did. And I like to take a couple days before and a couple days after. And then, of course, it was the weekend and it was getting all the stuff and doing all the cooking. And I normally would work out on a Sunday. It's just, there was just so much going on this past Sunday. But I had a great workout Monday. Today's Tuesday. I'm already feeling it. I feel sore just from taking that week off. But mentally, it does feel really good to get back to moving my body. I want to, this week, probably tomorrow when I'm back at the gym, I'm going to really use a lot of the new equipment, the sled that I love, and intensify my workouts this month. The last thing I wanted to talk about in my mental health segment is the fact that big tech there's a big court case for big tech on mental health. And for a long time, we've talked about the effects of social media and how it's very harmful for people and kids are getting addicted to it. And it's just, people can tell it's just not good for them to spend a lot of time on social media. Well, for the first time, this woman, and I'm just, from what I've heard on different podcasts, a woman successfully sued Snapchat. Snapchat settled with her. Snapchat and another platform. She said that I'm going to read this article, but, and it'll talk about this, but from my recollection, Snapchat did settle with her, but a couple of the other platforms are pushing back because this is going to open a floodgate of lawsuits. So this is an article from the Courthouse News Service. Engineered addiction. Landmark trial over social media's effect on kids boots up in downtown LA. So, this is a first of a kind trial over the effects that social media has on children, and it kicked off with opening statements on Monday by the plaintiff and two defendants, Meta and Google. Okay, so these are the two that have enough money where they want to try to fight this. This case is about two of the richest corporations in history who have engineered addiction in children's brains, said attorney Mark Lanier, representing the plaintiff known in court as Kaylee GM, to preserve her anonymity. I'm going to show you evidence that these companies built machines designed to addict the brains of children, and they did it on purpose. Lanier, a folksy, excitable Texan who moonlights as a pastor, exuded all the charm of a 1990s sitcom dad, employing a number of props, including a hammer, a phone book-sized working slot machine, an eggshell, and a toy Ferrari. Two of his daughters are serving as his co-counsels throughout the trial. Meta's attorney, Paul Schmidt, was less boisterous and colorful. Despite a black eye and gigantic cartoonish welt on his forehead, which he said was the product of a recent fall, he delivered an almost so somber opening statement in which he argued Kaylee's lifelong struggles with depression were largely the product of her chaotic upbringing. He cited the records of two therapists and a psychiatrist who treated her over the years. All three of them believed you can be addicted to social media, Schmidt told the jury. They never diagnosed Kaylee with social media addiction. This is the first bellwether trial in a massive consolidated action pitting more than 1,600 personal injury plaintiffs, parents who say their children were harmed by excessive social media use, against 5 globally popular social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram, both of which are owned by Meta, YouTube, which is owned by Google, TikTok, and Snapchat. Both TikTok and Snap reached settlements with Kaylee GM in the weeks before the trial, but they remain as defendants in the overall case. The verdict of the bellwether trial could be used to help craft a global settlement. Up until now, social media companies have been shielded from a wide range of liability by Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which protects online platforms from litigation over content. But plaintiffs have successfully argued that Section 230 does not shield tech companies from liability from their design features, such as like notifications, infinite scroll, or autoplay and filters, which alter the appearance of a subject in photographs. Plaintiffs say those design features have helped foment a mental health crisis among teenagers, causing depression, anxiety, addiction, and a host of body image issues. Although the case could have enormous implications for the country and the world, with some predicting or perhaps hoping for something akin to a tobacco industry like reckoning for the tech giants, the jury will hear nothing of the 1,600 plaintiffs or a potential global settlement worth untold billions. Instead, this trial will focus on Kaylee GM and her personal challenges. The plaintiffs will have to prove that Instagram and YouTube, Kaylee never took to Facebook, played a substantial role in her mental health harm. Kaylee is now easily overwhelmed, Lanier told the jury. The part of her mind that filters out noise and stress, it was devastated by the defendant's machine. Lanier likened social media apps to a casino. Every swipe of the finger, he said, can lead to a like notification, which then releases dopamine into the user's brain. It could also lead to a funny video or some form of social validation. Or, he said, it could be something that tells her she's not good enough. That's uncertainty. Maybe next time is how the machines hurt her brain. Much of Kaylee GM's case will rest on a trove of internal documents unearthed in discovery in which employees of Instagram and YouTube acknowledge targeting kids as well as the effects their products have on them. The goal is not viewership, it's viewer addiction, reads one such document displayed in by Lanier in court. A YouTube internal strategy memo argued, if we want to win big with teens, we must bring them in as tweens. An internal message from an Instagram employee admitted, we're basically pushers. We're causing reward deficit disorder because people are binging on Instagram so much they can't feel the reward. Schmidt focused mostly on Kaylee herself. He said her mental health issues came mostly from her tumultuous home life in which she experienced both physical and emotional abuse at the hands of her mother. My mother would not talk to me for a few days on end, Kaylee would tell a mental health professional, according to a slide Schmidt showed the jury. She would hit me on the back of the head and call me stupid. In another slide, she said, Mom screams at me all day, every day. She makes me want to kill myself. Imagine the impact of that on a young child. Schmidt said that when Kaylee was 13, she stated her worst memory was when she had to call the police because her sister was making a suicidal attempt. Far from being the cause of her depression and anxiety, Schmidt argued, social media was a coping mechanism and a positive outlet to talk about her feelings. Attorney Louis Lee will give Google's opening remarks on Tuesday. The trial will feature one star witness, 41-year-old Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, the third richest person in the world, according to Forbes. He is expected to testify in person sometime this week. Neil Mohan, the CEO of YouTube, and Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram, are also expected to stand in the month-long trial. Coincidentally, this was not the only social media trial to kick off on Monday. New Mexico Attorney General Raul Torres is suing Meta for failing to protect minors from sexual exploitation. So this is a hot topic, right? And I think anybody that has been on social media, been on YouTube, knows how addicted it is. Like sometimes I'll go to open my phone and I'll be going to go to my notes app or check my calendar, and I'll just naturally go on Instagram. It's weird. It's like this behavior and this almost addiction that just makes me go there. And YouTube is now becoming that for me. It's becoming addictive. Like because now I think that getting obsessed with the Karen Reed trial and all the clips from the Karen Reed trial that I would watch on YouTube got me into this YouTube short video addiction. It is, and I can't imagine if I'd started from a very young age. I did a topic on last week's show. If you're a subscriber and you get my premium content, I did a piece on bigorexia and how a lot of young men are developing this body dysmorphic condition because they're seeing all of these images of larger guys, big muscles, and they feel less than. They feel like they should be bigger, and they're developing all of these just mental disorders based on the fact that they're seeing these images. And the problem with these platforms is, especially, and again, I don't spend a lot of time on TikTok because specifically I chose not to because I didn't want to get addicted to it. Because I hear about all these people that just go down this rabbit hole because they're served just video after video of this algorithm that knows what you like to see and just keeps you there. And I'm like, that's the last thing I need is another platform that's sucking me in. So I do a quick post on TikTok and then I just shut it down. And so obviously I think that it's very useful to grow business and for people that are trying to, grow a podcast like I am. But there's also a lot of harms. And I think these internal documents that were sent by employees, these are going to be very damning. Because that is how they were designed to make users want to stay, to keep scrolling, to get those dopamine hits. And just like in a lot of other trials, when they get those internal documents or the text messages, that's where a lot of the guilt shows because people don't expect to have their internal personal text messages or emails displayed for everybody to see. Now, I'm curious. I mean, again, the reason I'm glad I don't have children is dealing, how do you as a parent, and, for all the parents listening, how do you manage your kids' social media and phone use? I mean, a lot of Australia just banned phones from schools. I think every country should do that. Obviously, parents do want a way to get a hold of their kids, but, and obviously there's like the Life 360 and all these good things about being able to track your child. But I don't know, maybe you just put a tracker on their backpack or something else where you know where they are all the time. But I think that that's a really good thing that Australia is doing, and some of these other countries are looking to put these restrictions. I think America should too. I mean, I think if I had a child, I would heavily restrict their social media use until I don't know, I would like to do it until they became 18 or at least 16. But I also know that must be really difficult when all their friends have it and they feel left out and they're not as cool or they're being made fun of. And again, a lot of issues that parents have to deal with, important to raising a healthy child, a healthy minded child. Oh, so challenging. Anyway, that is my mental health check-in of the week. All right, let's get into a very quick diet culture media moment. Now, I wanted to mention this. There was a really good commercial during the Super Bowl, and it was this really an alarming stat about how 50% of young girls quit playing sports because of body shaming. And the commercial featured a lot of different kids in different body sizes, kids in smaller body sizes, kids in larger body sizes, playing sports, being involved, everybody together. And then sharing that statistic. And what an eye-opening message to everybody, right? These are the harms of really commenting on children's bodies, right? On other people's bodies. Like, you're not supposed to say, you look great. I mean, obviously this show, we talk about all this stuff. And this is a show that hopefully only people that are of a certain mindset watch, right? Because again, some of these discussions, some of these topics can be very triggering to people that have a tendency to develop eating disorders or have body image issues. And and that's really easy. I think every child, every person, as we grow up, we're all looking for social cues and what's acceptable, how do we become accepted, how do we fit in, right? And I think when you have, and kids are just natural bullies, they make fun of each other. And a lot of kids have fear of participating because of bullying or because of comments that are being made. And imagine the future athletes, the good things that come from being involved in sports and team building and achieving goals and just moving your body and getting that physical activity when you're young. Imagine those things being stunted because of some rude comments that people make. And I think commercials like that highlight the harm of that. And I think creating that awareness so that parents can talk to their kids and say, make sure that you're not making these comments about other kids' bodies, because you could be holding them back from having fun in life, from going after that sport, for being involved in something they really want to do and love. And there was a clip that I'm going to share, and this is from Dr. Idz, IDZ. And it shows this commercial that was played during the Super Bowl. And it's Mike Tyson talking about, eating real food, not eating junk, about how terrible he felt when he was fat, and then he proceeds to make fun of himself. And I think that Dr. Idz does a really good job at highlighting that what you're doing, you're trying to put forth a helpful message, but really what you're doing is creating more weight stigma and shame. And that causes a ton of harm. That's exactly what that whole commercial was about. Imagine if a child saw this commercial and then thought, oh, well, I can't go out and live my life until I'm not, fat and fudgy anymore. Imagine the harms of that. And from hearing a commercial like this. Okay, so here's the commercial and the clip.
My sister's name was Denise. She died of obesity at 25. She had a heart attack. I was so fat and nasty. I would eat anything. I was like 345 pounds. A quart of ice cream every hour. I had so much self-hate when I was like that. I just wanted to kill myself. We're the most powerful country in the world, and we have the most obese, fudgy people. Something has to be done about processed food in this country.
Well, that was the dumbest and most insensitive ad I've seen in forever, coming from Mike Tyson on behalf of HHS. Time for school. Firstly, Mike openly said that he wanted to end himself when he was fatter. So he admitted to suffering from shame, self-hatred and distress. Then in the same breath, he laughs when calling Americans obese and fudgy, whatever that means. So the message to millions of fat people is basically, I hated myself when I looked like you, but I'm also going to mock you. What a brilliant way to improve health outcomes. Weight stigma does not improve health outcomes. We have plenty of evidence showing that weight stigma can increase the risk of disordered eating, alcohol use, mental health issues, poor sleep, and actually worsen or hinder their weight loss goals. So if the goal is to improve population health, then shaming people about their bodies is one of the most reliable ways to fail. Then there is the classic lazy solution of eat real food, avoid processed food. Truly groundbreaking stuff. Do they genuinely think that heavier people are unaware that fruits and vegetables are healthier than cakes and sweets? Do they think this is a knowledge gap issue? People are not obese because they missed a poster saying that broccoli is healthy. We need to remember that over 50 million Americans live in food insecurity, with millions of others living in food deserts. And healthier foods are often more expensive, less accessible, harder to store, and less time efficient. Shouting "eat real food" at people while doing absolutely nothing to make that real food more accessible and affordable is doing precisely nothing. If HHS genuinely wanted to help, then the ad would have focused on systemic change rather than individual blame. It would have acknowledged the complexity of obesity rather than pretending that obesity is fixed with a catchphrase and a website. What an absolute joke. Class dismissed.
So what do you think about that commercial, that message? I think Mike Tyson is trying to teach that, hey, we need to eat real food, and biting into an apple and showing these are the things that you want to be eating. You want to be eating real whole foods, not eating the junk. And I think that Dr. Ids is right. People probably know that an apple is healthier than that cookie, but there's so many more complicated socioeconomic issues at play here. It's not just that simple. I do think that there is a need for nutrition education. I don't think that everybody, I think that it's people that have privilege and education take it for granted that everybody knows these things. So I don't think that everybody has this knowledge necessarily. I think just not everybody has that same level of knowledge. There are some people that think there are healthy, that some of this ultra processed food probably is healthy, right? But the message behind it is important about not perpetuating shame and weight stigma. So it is an interesting dilemma of how do you deliver messages in the best way possible that is not going to create shame, is not going to create stigma, and teaches and educates. It's a fine line because everybody perceives information differently. Sometimes when you mean well and you are trying to put forth guidance, it's taken in a very sensitive way by certain types of people. And so it's not easy. It's just like the government trying to define ultra processed foods. It's not the easiest thing to do. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting to talk about. And I just think that all of these messages that we're putting out in our society, we're just inundated. We're inundated from social media, from all these different screens we watch now. And kids are seeing it everywhere. And everyone's getting different messages from their parents, from schools, from the algorithms that they fall into. So anyway, I thought the Super Bowl commercial was very well done. It was actually a Dove commercial. And it was just purely like statistical, educational, and highlighted the harms. So I thought that was really well done. Bravo, Dove. And that is my diet culture media moment of the week. All right, let's get into a science of skincare segment. So I talked about how I went and got my Botox, which I'm very happy with. Now I went to a lady that I've not gone to in a very, very long time. And this is one of the first places I went to in Arizona. I can't remember, I think I was referred to her, but she's really good. She's a nurse practitioner. She's very expensive. And so that's why I haven't been going to her lately, just because. So I went in thinking I had already in my mind was like, okay, I know I'm going to spend more here from what I've been doing with the whole Groupon thing, which again, that's not the best way to go about getting your Botox done. Obviously, you want to go to somebody good. And she's been someone that I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to her for filler. I haven't had filler in forever. The reason I went to her this time is I had a gift card there. So back when I was in Massachusetts trying to make that business work, um, I I believe that the next intensive treatment I was going to get was that PRP with like the microneedling with PRP, where it's like the vampire facial where they pull your own blood and then they do the microneedling and then they put your own blood, so your own growth factors seep into your skin. And that's what I believed I wanted done. And so I'd asked Chad for a gift card there. So he had gotten me like a $250 gift card. So I just had this there. And then the more research I did on the PRP microneedling, I'm like, I don't know if I want to get this. Because then I'm like, ooh, Ellacor seems so much better. So I just had this gift card that I finally realized. And especially, so the PRP, what I've also learned is it's better to do when you're younger. Like if you're in your 30s, especially. Like I'm 46, and the older you get, the less effective it is because you just have less of those growth factors in your blood. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to spend all that money if I'm not going to get the best result. So I'm like, okay, well, let me just. So the last few times I've gotten my Botox done, because I'm not going to somebody skilled, I haven't wanted to get, like they call them like this little bunny area, which you want to go to somebody really good because, I mean, you could go blind from Botox. So this little area here, this area here, and by my mouth where I've gotten paralyzed before was really bothering me. And then again, the last time I went, I just didn't feel like I got really good results. Anyway, so I went back and I had the $250 gift card to use. I had the $75 Ally gift card that I had to use. So there's already like what, 3, 5. Okay, now that's around that is usually what I spend with my Groupon. $300 or $400 is usually what I'll spend when I'm on my Groupon. So I brought another like 300 with me. I'm like, okay, I don't really want to spend more than like $625 on this. But I get there and it, I didn't want to be like, hey, I'm on a budget. And so she looked at my chart. She's like, I think she's fine just to do exactly what she did last time. So she did my neck. She did by my mouth. She did all over my eyes, my entire forehead, my little bunny areas. And I'm so happy with what she did. Like she is very, very talented at how she injects. And I got Botox instead of like a Dysport. So I am really happy with the results. Am I happy with what I spent there? No. But it was worth it. I think going to somebody quality is important. So I might try to see her once a year just to get those important areas that I don't necessarily trust my cheap people to do. And she did tell me she just bought a building, she's moving, she's going to be expanding some of the services that she offers. She's doing like peptides, and I'm like, ooh, peptides. So, because eventually I'll probably do some like skin stuff, once I'm financially there. But I did ask her, I'm like, oh, are you going to be expanding your services? And I asked her I said, I've been researching 2 things. I said, I've been researching Thermage and I've been researching Ellacor. And she said that Thermage, so back in the day when she first started, she's like, she said Thermage was not the best. She said it ended up kind of melting people's fat instead of like boosting their collagen. So she said it would have an opposite effect of what they were trying to achieve. And I did hear that, like this Stephanie woman who's this Newport Beach, triple board certified, I think she's a dermatologist. No, she's not a dermatologist. She's a No, maybe she is. Anyway, she has the latest Thermage, and she talks about how, like, back in the day, the old Thermage products did kind of melt the fat, and how if you don't go to someone that gets the newest devices, you know, buyer beware, because you'll probably end up with not great results. But she said the new lasers, the new products that they're coming out with are fabulous. So, and I think that's just across the board, because that's exactly what my girl that I just went to said. She's like, well, you know, she's like, I kind of turned away from Thermage because it was more melting fat. And now we do, she's like, now I'm more into lasers like Softwave. So she has a Softwave machine. And I was looking at some of the before and afters in her lobby, because she has like this whole book of before and afters. And the results are very good. Like, I can see the difference with some of these treatments that these people have had, and they're treating the neck and the lower face. Some of it was pretty dramatic and some of it was not. Some of those women, I'd be like, well, I'd be pissed if I were her, if I got those types of results. And with other people, I'd be like, oh wow, that is very noticeable. So, but it's funny because when she was talking about that, she's like, I like more like Softwave, and she's like, which is very like an updated therapy treatment. And as soon as she said therapy, that took me back to when I was in my 20s, and I was in that very like controlling relationship where I felt like I had to be perfect, and I was trying to do all these techniques to stay young, and I did this therapy thing. But again, I was 8 or 9 years old. I did not need, or maybe I was in my early 30s at that time. I did not need it. Okay. I was doing this on my neck because I knew that my neck would be an area that I had to work on later in life. So I was like trying to get ahead of it. And I remember the lady kind of saying little things here and there, like, well, you probably don't need this right now. Like, you're probably too young to do this. And I do distinctly remember her saying something about how it could have the opposite effect and melt fat. And I actually think that that's what happened. I think I actually, because it was so long ago and because I was so young, I didn't really need it. I think it just ended up melting some of the fat that I already had there and giving me a worse result as I age. So that's the danger of doing some of these things too young, or not waiting until the technology is advanced enough where you'll actually get good results. And also, you know, just getting it at some random med spa. Like, just you do want to go to someone quality. Like, if I did get any of these lasers or you know, lasers specifically, if I ever got any of those done, I would spend the extra money. I would go to someone that's going to have the best equipment, the newest equipment, the most updated, because the technology does get better and better and better each year. And you do, if you're going to invest, you do want those good results. So anyway, so when she said, she's like, oh, this is like the new therapy. And I'm kind of like, okay, that ironically, that's what I felt like melted my fat back in the day. So I think it's just a matter of having the newest technology, the latest devices, and finding someone that you really trust, and finding something that will give you the results that you want if you believe in the science behind why it works. And I'm sure the newest Thermage and the newest Softwave are probably both really good. And then I brought up Ellacor. I'm like, have you heard of Ellacor? Would you ever offer that? And she's like, is that the coring technology? And I said, yeah. I said, it looks really effective. She goes, that just scares me. And she just shut it down. So it doesn't sound like that's something that she'll ever offer. But I'm still looking into it. That is something that I still think I want to do. But I did listen to a podcast from Sophia with an F, I thought this would be a much better podcast, because she said it was entitled Beauty Treatments I Regret. So I'm like, ooh, what does she regret? Because when I haven't listened to this podcast that much, but when I used to listen to it, she had never gotten Botox. I mean, she's young. She was still in her 20s. She's just now getting into her 30s. And so she hadn't done a lot of that stuff, but she's going to be getting married soon. So now she's looking into all this stuff. So she talked about getting laser hair removal. She did go to a consultation with a dermatologist, and she said that she realized that this fat pad And if you're on YouTube, you can see this area that I'm talking about, like right underneath her eye. It's like that apple part of your cheek that's next to your nose. She's like, that fat pad, she's like, it's just completely gone. She's like, it's amazing how one day it was there and then the next day it's gone. And I totally related to that. I'll never forget when that part, I remember when that part, because I was like, oh my God, I need under eye filler. My eyes are so hollow. And when I went to this med spa, I mean, it is a med spa that but you know, again, very like nurse practitioners, very talented people. That was, they're like, oh, you just need some filler in that area. And they were right. It really did. It was completely gone. It was completely flat right there. And they directly injected some, I think Juvederm maybe, and it just plumped it right up. And it got rid of that tired look that I had. And it was awesome. Now, this dermatologist that Sophia went to was very conservative, and she had asked her just about her health and her lifestyle. And Sophia was telling her how she barely sleeps, doesn't eat well, had been smoking, like smoking nicotine, smoking cigarettes, smoking vapes, how she was still in the process of quitting. I guess she had like some sort of nicotine patch in her mouth at the dermatologist. The dermatologist is like, throw that away right now. She said, I don't want to do any filler on you because she said, now that you're giving up nicotine, she said, your body will start to heal itself and some of the inflammation will go away and some of that fat pad might reappear. And so the dermatologist didn't want to add volume there and then have natural volume return once her body healed itself and have her look unnatural. So the doctor wants her to do the PRP and microneedling. So that's what she's doing. And apparently the results for her have been amazing. She's loving the way that she looks, and she's probably at a perfect age to do it because she's younger. She's like, you know, more than a decade younger than I am. She probably has lots of growth factors in that young blood. And so doing the microneedling, putting that blood back on those holes and allowing all of that plasma and to get into her skin and bring back her natural collagen. I get why she's loving the results. So anyway, so I'll probably be maybe reviewing her podcast a little bit more because she's going to be doing a lot of these treatments leading up to her wedding. So I'm very interested. But if anybody out there, if you've tried the PRP microneedling, if you've tried Ellacor, if you've been botched, please feel free to write in, share your results. I love hearing from other people on this topic. I love it when people share real results. So anyway, that is my Science of Skincare segment of the week. All right, let's get into my healthy habits of the week. Starting on my healthy journey of eating whole foods this month. So starting on that Sunday, had a lot of, I talked about just all the different food I prepared for and went out and did all my grocery shopping. I had a bunch of carrots or cucumbers that I chopped up that I wanted to finish. I didn't finish the feta cheese. The feta cheese is just, I probably need to throw it away. But I finished these cucumbers and just had a salad one of the first days. I had the rest of that Thai food that I'd made with the carrots and the green beans. I did make that green curry Thai fried rice, although I didn't do the fried rice. I just basically did the carrots, the green beans, some pork. Finished that yesterday. It was on its last leg. It needed to be eaten and I didn't want it to go to waste. So I finished that. I did make this incredible dish called larb moo. And for this first recipe, I took ground chicken. The next time I make it, I'm going to do ground pork. And I did change the recipe slightly. I did use a little bit of oil. It only called, it's very healthy the way it's originally written, where you only fry it, saute the meat in water. Well, I didn't want it to be dry, and I did want a little bit of fat. So I did use a little bit of oil in the wok, just a little bit, and some water. So basically you just saute the meat, and then you put in, let's see, it's got fish sauce, it's got lots of lime juice, it's got a lot of cilantro and green onion and Thai chili, and just a lot of, herbs and spices, and it's really, really good. And then I put that over, it's got, I think, a little bit of rice vinegar in it. But it was so incredibly flavorful and delicious and satisfying. Oh, one of the most important ingredients is the shallots. So you thinly slice shallots, and then once the meat stops cooking, you put in all the shallots raw, and you just saute them so you still have a nice crunch to those shallots. And then you put in the green beans. Now, I left out the mint. This recipe does call for quite a bit of mint, and I don't like mint in my savory food. So I did leave out the mint, but I did put in plenty of the cilantro. I put in a little bit of extra green onion, and phenomenal. So good. So I'm going to be making, this week, I think I'm going to make some sort of Cajun shrimp or spicy shrimp with a mango salsa. I want to make this beef dish, this beef Thai dish. So I'm going to make those this week, and I'll be talking about that. Now, one thing I did make was a matcha tea vegan ice cream in my Ninja Creamy. So this called for full fat coconut milk, my matcha tea, which I did tell you, I bought this huge thing of it at Costco, and I was so excited to make this ice cream, this healthy ice cream. So put in 2 scoops of the matcha, and then it had some monk fruit sugars, like monk fruit sweetener, I should say. It's not sugar. It's it's sugar-free. It's monk fruit. And it's very, very sweet. So I thought that the 3 tablespoons it called for would be plenty. I put in some vanilla extract. I did put in some collagen and protein, and then I froze it. And I did want to get some toasted coconut. I wanted to get some just coconut shreds that have no sugar, so I could toast those up and add it. And I knew I was going to probably put some honey on some walnuts, and with maybe some coconut for a topping. But I couldn't find the coconut. Trader Joe's didn't have it. So I ended up just slicing up some banana and chopped up some frozen walnuts, put a little bit of honey on them, and then use that as a topping. And so I took that out. I, froze it overnight, took it out, waited the 10 minutes for it to thaw, blended it up. And it was it came out nice and creamy. It looked beautiful. It was this rich green color of the matcha. And then I ate it. Not great. Unfortunately, it tasted just like matcha tea. I mean, and I'm not a huge fan of the way matcha tea tastes. It's very strong. Obviously, all the things that you see on social media or when you're getting it at Starbucks, it has a lot of sugar or that sugar-free syrup. And it's got like all this milk in it, and it's creamy. And it's, it's more decadent than anything. And I could have put more monk fruit sugar in it to sweeten it up. Maybe it probably would have tasted better. I did eat it. I ate a cup of it with my walnuts and banana, but it was not good. It really wasn't. It was just too strong of a matcha flavor. It was, almost bitter. So that was a little bit of a foodie fail. I tried. I really wanted it to taste good. So I might end up just putting a small amount of my matcha tea in my superfood smoothies so I use it. Or maybe I'll try it again, but just put a wicked ton, a lot more sugar, or I'm sorry, monk fruit sweetener, or maybe maple syrup or actual honey in the matcha tea ice cream. I'll probably try it at least one more time with more sweetener, more not artificial sweetener, but more a natural sweetener. And maybe it'll taste good then. I do want to give it at least one more try because I was hoping to bring that to my team meeting this month and have a very healthy dessert option instead of the brownie sundae that I had last time. So, because I do still need dessert, right? What I've been making is my Greek yogurt parfait, which has been delicious. So I finally went out and got local honey. I'm hoping this year that it helps me with my allergies. I get terrible allergies this time of year, especially as we get into like March and April. That's when it really hits me. So I'll probably finish this whole thing of honey and maybe even another one by the time this month is over. And I'm just hoping that that helps because allergies are not fun. But this yogurt this parfait that I've been making at night is Greek yogurt, chopped up walnuts, chopped up banana, chopped up strawberry, some honey, and oh my God, it is so, so, so good. I was going to get more at the grocery store, but I want to finish up. I bought some apples. So I want to do a little bit of honey and almond butter and dip my apples in it for dessert this week. And then I'll probably go back to my parfait next week. And then I've been eating my dark chocolate. That's been satisfying my sweet tooth. So yeah, so those are the things that I've been doing on my Whole Foods journey. And those are my healthy habits of the week. I hope all of you are having some delicious, healthy habits. And actually, I didn't talk about my working out. So that is the other thing that I added back in. So yesterday I did my strength training. I did my cardio. And I forgot to mention, I did buy some creatine at Costco. So now I'm doing my little scoop of powdered creatine, and I did pick up some chocolate protein. So I've been doing just a quick chocolate protein shake with a little bit of creatine in it. And that's also helping me just keep my sweet tooth under control, giving me the protein that I need, and keeping me on track this Whole Foods journey. So anyway, those are all of my healthy habits of the week. I hope all of you have had some great healthy habits this week yourselves. All right, let's get into my tasty treats of the week. So I thought I wouldn't have a tasty treats segment because, I mean, my tasty treats have been healthy, right? But because of my Super Bowl cheat day, I have plenty of tasty treats to report. So of course, I did have my Auntie Annie's homemade pretzel bites, and they were really good. They came out, it's the first time I've ever made homemade pretzels. I would like to try the recipe again when I'm, off of this Whole Foods journey, and maybe make like a pretzel bun or make it with an overnight because I used instant yeast, like instant fast rise yeast. And I'm just thinking if I did a recipe where it rises with regular yeast overnight, I'm wondering if that might turn out even better. But I did eat quite a few of those bites and some of the beer cheese. By the end of the night, I was taking just like sliced cheese from the charcuterie board and putting it on a pretzel bite and just eating it with like some hard cheese. It was all really yummy because, again, I've been avoiding cheese lately too. I did do a couple of salami on a piece of cracker, on a cracker with a piece of cheese. I did a tiny bit of charcuterie. Um, One person brought this huge thing of Costco cookies. I did have a couple of those. And this one of my friend's moms brought these beautifully homemade designed, homemade but beautifully decorated cookies. Some of them were chocolate looking, chocolate icing with, then they were looked like footballs. And then some of them were, it was like green and the end zone. It was all football designed. They looked so pretty, like you didn't want to eat them. And usually beautiful cookies like that don't taste that good. They usually have like that marzipan on them and I don't know, they just don't taste that good. These cookies were so good. It was that sugary icing that I love. And I think I probably had 4 of those. Yeah, I went a little crazy once I just let go. Had a piece of coconut cream pie. Yeah, ate a lot of sugary things. I think I was missing my desserts, and for whatever reason, ironically, I usually don't, when I'm drinking, I usually don't want a lot of sugar. But I think maybe just cutting back on sugar throughout the week, I just really got my fill that day and didn't feel great going to bed, I will say. And the next day did not feel great either. The nice thing about that Monday is 2 of my early clients canceled. So I didn't have my 5 a.m. or my 6 a.m. client. And I moved my 7 to 7:30. So at least I got a little bit of sleep and I didn't have to wake up at the crack of dawn. And again, I did get a good workout in. So I think and then I did mostly, I went back to, Whole Foods that Monday, and I was craving things. I will tell you, because there's still lots of indulgent food in the house that I'm avoiding. But I did just get right back on track. I didn't, beat myself up. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to have today. Got up the next day and again, didn't feel the best, but I wasn't like punishing myself the next day. I wasn't like, I'm not going to allow myself to eat the next day. It's just, just got right back into it and feel better today. So today I go into the office. I don't get my ice cream. That's the saddest thing, is I don't go in and get my free ice cream at my job anymore. I do miss that. I will say that was a little habit I'd created for myself that I am looking forward to having again next month. But anyway, those were my tasty treats of the week. I hope all of you have had some delicious, tasty treats this week yourselves. All right, let's get into my podcast review. So again, this is Valentine's Day weekend if you're listening to this on Sunday. And this was a podcast from TJ Holmes and Amy Robach. And they're the two, they were on, I think, Good Morning America, and they had this scandal, and now they have a podcast that kind of reporting the news, little break, breaking news moments, very short podcast. But they had one entitled, "Is Your Relationship with Food Ruining Your Relationship?" And so this was based on an article that was written about their relationship in Yahoo. So Yahoo News did an article about them. And they talk about it throughout this podcast. So let's get into it. So TJ started talking about, how important are eating habits to a successful relationship. And Amy went on to say it's weird to think about because it's not usually a question you're asking when you're starting to date someone. She said, but, if you think about what you typically do with your significant other in a relationship, a lot of time is spent eating, probably more than really any other activity. And TJ talked about the Yahoo article and how Amy totally changed the way she ate after her cancer treatment. So she did have breast cancer, and how that impacted her relationship with TJ Holmes. So this is where I was very interested, because I'm like, oh, interesting. So she used to eat one way before her cancer treatments, and now she eats a different way. And TJ said that it's not something that he had really thought about until this idea of this article came up. He said, when you think about it, if someone in the relationship likes to eat hot dogs and the other person's a vegan, that could cause a problem. And Amy said it does make sense to talk about, because we do influence each other in relationships. She said we do decide what restaurants we're going to go to, or if we're ordering in, where are we going to order in? And then she said that there's an emotional side to it too. If someone's trying to stay away from something that you love, or you like to eat something that someone else just can't stand, or can't stand the smell of, that can cause an issue over time. And then TJ went on to say, I guess this girl Natalie that they work with is the one that wrote this article, and he never really thought about how they eat as a couple, how they ate before they were in this couple, and how they ate after together once they became a couple. And he said there are some upsides, because you can inspire someone by your eating choices. If your partner sees that you have good habits, you could inspire them to improve their habits. Maybe trying new stuff with your partner could be interesting and an exciting thing to do as a couple. He said you can also hold each other accountable, like you do with running, having a running buddy, an accountability partner. All those things can be very beneficial in a relationship. And Amy went on to say that, if you're someone that's eating cleaner, at least by societal standards, or, by scientific evaluation, she said you also, something to think about is, you may not know it, but you might be criticizing your partner or coming across as judgmental. If you're trying to convince your partner to see food the same way you see it, you may come across as overly critical of their choices. There are also relationships where you also may try to tempt your partner. If someone in the relationship is trying to stay away from candy or limit sugar, and then the other partner's throwing down Swedish fish or gummy bears, that can cause problems. And I just, as I'm going through this podcast and listening to it, it's so reminding me of like some of the struggles I've talked about on this show with Chad and I, and how, there's times that I'm trying to be really, focused on whole foods, and I'll see him eating candy or bringing, chips into the house. And it's hard for me, because it's very tempting, and how I almost want him on my eating patterns, but it's also not fair for me to impose the way I eat on him. So that can be very challenging in a relationship. And it's just, I think it's fun to talk about. TJ talked about how the criticism part can go with anything, not just food, the way you dress or your taste in movies or music. He did ask Amy if she's ever had food become a problem in a relationship in the past. And Amy's like, in a romantic relationship, no, but in friendships and even with my children, yes, it has become an issue. TJ's never experienced this. He's like, I cook. He's like, I cook all the time. I don't need anyone to prepare meals for me. So he's like, I get to eat. I get to pick how I eat. And it's worked for me. He said, I just have never had a struggle like this in a relationship. He said, but when I think about how I used to eat growing up compared to how I eat now, it is very different. And Amy talked about how she grew up in the South and in the Midwest, and she grew up eating a lot of processed foods. She said she felt a little bad in the article because it sounds like she's tearing her mom down. But she's like, that's just the way that it was. We all ate a lot of processed foods back then. And Amy was like, she cooked all the time, every day. She would prepare meals from scratch. But on the weekend, she's like, we would eat Chef Boyardee from the can and Vienna sausages and Spam sandwiches. And she said, we did eat a lot of candy and drink a lot of soda. She said, but I also don't think that people just knew as much back then. She said there was a war against fat. There wasn't a war against sugar or carbs necessarily. And so the thinking and the science has evolved, and the recommendations have changed from when we were young. And again, when she started talking about the stuff from her childhood, it reminds me of, I think she's maybe a little bit older than me, and again, my mom cooked, but we also would eat beefaroni. Like beefaroni was my favorite Chef Boyardee meal. And I also like the raviolis. And just you think about now to think about eating this slop from a can, I'm like, I would never. But back then, it was in the closet. It tasted good. Now, TJ talked about how he grew up in Memphis in Mississippi. And it was one of the poorest regions in the US, and everything was fried. He's like fried pork chops, fried macaroni, fried collard greens. He said nothing was grilled. He said, and it was all delicious. He goes, but I just didn't know back then that you could grill chicken, that you could grill fish. He said it had to be battered and dropped in a vat of oil. And Amy said that back then the only fish that she ate were fish sticks. She's like, that was my only exposure to seafood back then. And TJ said, well, now when we open our cabinets, he's like, you can't find junk. He said, you can't even find carbs, which I thought was interesting when he said that, or processed anything. He said, we're keto for the most part together, which again, I had no idea that the two of them basically eat keto together. And it does make sense because of her cancer, that she had cancer. Because I have talked about how, the only way I would ever do keto is if Chad got cancer again. And I would want to support him and try to, because there is a lot of science behind the keto diet and how, for people with cancer, there's implications for it being helpful as an adjunct to cancer treatment. Again, go talk to your doctor. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but just eliminating all sugar and carbs from a diet, helping to starve the cancer cells, it does make sense. And the fact that Amy doesn't want to get a reoccurrence of cancer and she eats keto, it totally makes sense. And so Amy said, you talked about how you lived a keto lifestyle even before I did. And TJ was in the Arkansas athletic program for a long time. And he said they put us on very specific diets. They gave us the carbs that they wanted to eat. And sometimes it was just this red liquid that they'd be like, go have your carbs. He said at that point I was eating a lot of, meat and vegetables, controlled carbs. He said, I don't like potatoes or French fries. He said, I just eat clean. He said, it wasn't a decision I made, but it became a habit in college, which is interesting because a lot of people develop poor eating habits in college, but I guess as an athlete, he did develop really good ones in college. And Amy said, not to take away from your discipline because you do have a lot of it. She said, but you don't know how lucky you are because you don't miss or love potatoes. She said, potatoes are amazing. She said, so is bread. And I'm here to tell you, I love that stuff. She's like, I love French bread. I love potatoes. I love pizza. I love French fries. And I'm telling you, I didn't pass any of that up. She said, until after my cancer diagnosis, I had kind of that YOLO attitude where I work out hard. I've always been an athlete, so I figured I could just go ahead and eat these things because I justified bad eating habits because I was working out a lot and I was active. Now that really spoke to me because I've talked about how on this podcast where I always thought that as long as I was maintaining my weight, who cares if I'm eating extra sugar or eating these ultra processed foods because clearly I'm still managing my weight and I'm working out. But then when I started looking at the effects of sugar on the brain and how some of these foods can potentially lead to dementia or, these other health conditions where, yeah, you can still develop those even if you're in a smaller body. That doesn't matter. And that was a huge rude awakening to me, that cares if I'm just maintaining my weight, if I'm filling myself with, like back in the day when, a lot of people, watching their points on Weight Watchers would eat a lot of the artificial stuff, the artificial sweeteners, the sugar-free things, but it was all like chemicals and all fake food just because it was low in fat or low in sugar. And now it's just like, no, eat real whole foods and avoid that chemically engineered processed stuff. And again, I do understand the health implications, disease prevention, ways of, not just, oh, I need to stay thin or I need to keep my weight controlled. It's more about what am I putting in for nutrients and vitamins and minerals, and how is that going to support my overall health goals of avoiding cancer, avoiding dementia. So, and again, some of this stuff like the pizza, the bread, I love that she's just saying like, look, so not only did he develop good habits in college, but TJ is probably one of those people that I've talked about on this podcast is not like, could pass up food, isn't so into food that it's easier for someone like him to make those healthier choices. My stepfather in the past, not my stepfather now. My stepfather now is like me. He loves sugar. He loves the bakery items and the pastries and all of that decadent stuff. My stepfather that passed away from cancer, and ironically, right, he had the cleanest diet. He could pass up food. He was always thin. He always managed his weight. He ran. He would eat very healthy food, just whole foods. But he just didn't care about food that much. He could like take it or leave it. It was like he just ate to survive. And again, I don't understand those people, but it sounds like TJ is more that type of person, whereas Amy did grow up on this stuff and well, TJ did too. He grew up on fried stuff in the South, but for whatever reason, he doesn't have that same like addictive food interest that Amy has, that I have. So the fact that she has this love for bread and potatoes and pizza and all these things and sticks to a keto diet for her health, shows she's very disciplined. So then TJ mentions how the food pyramid's been flipped and it's now a focus on proteins. And he says good fats. And Amy's like, well, they're actually promoting animal protein and animal fats, not necessarily the good healthy fats like the avocado fat, although it does promote that too. TJ said, well, back in the day, he said it was get fat out of your diet. And Amy talked about, there was a war on fat. I remember all I would drink was skim milk. I would degrease my burger patty, but then I would devour the French fries and the bun because I believed it was the animal fat that was bad for us. And she said now RFK Jr. is flipping some things around, and some people are applauding it. Some people are cautioning against it. TJ said another thing that the article discussed is food being a love language. And this is an area where we are aligned, he said, because it makes the decisions of where we eat and what we eat together very easy. And Amy said, there's a lot of stuff that's just eliminated from the menu. So when we go out, we order everything that we can have and we just share it. And TJ's like, it's a lot of vegetables, protein, salads. And Amy's like, well, you don't eat a lot of fruit. She said, I don't eat a lot of fruit around you. She said, but I do eat a lot of berries. I eat a lot of avocados. She said, you don't. She's like, you eat shellfish. I can't eat shellfish. And then TJ said, we usually get up. We make fried eggs and bacon. We usually have a salad and some sort of grilled meat for lunch. And then we'll figure out a dinner, which is usually more meat and vegetables. And he said, that's pretty much how we eat every single day. Which is very disciplined, very, healthy. I would not, again, eating this, this clean every single day. I mean, I do need some balance of the decadent, indulgent stuff in my, like a little piece of bread. Again, next month, I'm going to get sourdough back into my life, and having some potatoes or rice for me is important with a well-balanced meal. Them being keto, they do eliminate those things, and it is supposed to be better for overall disease prevention. But I also need to be satisfied. So I don't know that I could eat this way and feel satisfied on a regular basis, but I could if I was trying to help my partner keep away from cancer. So that is again, Amy has that reason, and it has impacted their relationship for sure. Amy then talked about how a lot of people wonder, who cooks, who does the grocery shopping. And in our house, we split it. She said, I usually do the grocery shopping and you usually do the cooking. It works great for us. She said that's a great way to divide up the duties because some people do both themselves. A lot that usually falls on women. And women are typically the traditional ones to take on both of those roles. But for us, it works, She said it's expected of women in societies. People think I'm lucky that I have, for men in society, it's applauded. They're looked at as a saint if they cook or do the grocery shopping. And she's like, I'm personally very grateful that you cook. I don't think that you're viewed negatively for it. She said, I think it's viewed as a very positive thing. And he asked if she feels judged by other women that aren't cooking. And she's like, I've never felt judged. She said, I think people more think I'm very lucky that you cook for me. And so then they talked about how they do have their guilty pleasures. So I was very excited to hear about how they splurge. And so their splurges are things like sugar-free gummy bears. Oh, sugar-free gummy bears, popcorn with lots of butter, keto cheesecake, and keto cookies. So it's a less guilty splurge. They'll have things that use almond flour instead of regular flour, or stevia, or some sort of different sweetener besides sugar, like erythritol. She said, but desserts probably aren't good for you in general, but that's what we'll do if we do go there. And so it was a very fun to listen to podcast and review. It absolutely, they're very disciplined. They're on camera. Chad and I talked about how I gained a ton of weight when we first started dating. And obviously that was COVID. The gyms were closed. I was suddenly going out and drinking a lot more and eating this like bar food all the time. And I did feel like I was slightly impacted in not so great a way by I think that happens in relationships. You're eating out more. You're just indulging more. You're in that happy stage. And I did realize I wanted to get back in control of it a little bit and incorporate some of my healthier habits into our lifestyle. I do think that I have a tendency to want to, cook really indulgent things. I mean, now that I'm settled and I like to, I don't know, I just like to bake and cook and make things like coffee cakes and cookies, and I don't know. So I always have that side of me that is always going to like those indulgent things and likes to make them and feed other people really, good tasting things. So I will never be I wouldn't want to be in a couple like this. I wouldn't want to be with someone that is so strict and so, clean, quote unquote, clean eating. I have that side in me where I need a little bit of both worlds. But I absolutely see the importance of impacting and influencing each other in ways that will support each other's longevity and health, and hopefully I hope to be a good influence. I've talked about how like this break in, doing Whole Foods was because I was just bringing a lot of junk into the house, and I'm like, I don't want to be a bad influence on him. So I recognize my own fault sometimes, that I'm sometimes the bad influence and don't want to be that person in this relationship. So anyway, I do like to discuss it and analyze it and talk about it. And that was, I think, a perfect podcast to review at this time of the month. Now, Chad and I will go out for Valentine's Day, but I did tell him, like, because at first we were going to go to a Thai restaurant that I love, but I've been making so many of those Thai dishes. I'm like, I don't really want Thai food, but I did want to go someplace where I would have a lot of different options. And so I was thinking Flower Child, but we've been there so many times that I looked up what are some competitors to Flower Child. And there's a place I've never tried. It is a chain restaurant, but it's known to have really delicious, healthy, whole foods, and it's called Sweet Green. I know it's very big in Los Angeles. I've seen my friend Michelle go there many times, and I'm always like, that looks so good, whatever she's eating right now. So that'll be a nice change of pace. We'll try a new restaurant. It'll be easy to stay on track and order something that's whole foods and delicious. And so I'll be talking about that on the next show. I also did see that one of the podcasts I review a lot of times that talks about diet culture is doing a topic on, is Whole Foods eating a diet? And I think it might be based on me and based on what I'm doing now, because I've definitely reviewed her and done a little analyzing of her. So she might be returning the favor, which is totally fine. I am kind of curious to see what she says about it. So I'll probably be doing that podcast review coming up soon. But anyway, if there's any topics you want me to cover, podcasts I should listen to, media I should review for this show, please feel free to DM me and follow me at the Diet Obsessed Podcast. Please go to YouTube, search the Diet Obsessed Podcast, click that subscribe button. It really, really, really helps the show, and it doesn't cost a thing. Please consider subscribing to Craving More or Craving More VIP. Those are my two premium content shows that you can subscribe on Patreon or wherever you listen to podcasts. And until we meet again, I hope all of you have a very balanced week.